Welcome, everyone. This is our first tester episode, maybe, for
Pilot.
a pilot for a segment, podcast, something that we're calling Cross Country. It's going to be me and Emmy talking about Catholicism and all things Catholic. And
And you probably know him better as Saint Waffles on most social media. Reddit has deemed me spooky little Catholic, but I'm pretty much Lonely Ghost Cottage on everything else.
I
So,
like the spooky little Catholic more, to be
so did
honest.
Reddit. But Reddit gave that to me like 3 weeks before Lent when I gave up social media.
And
So,
that's what we want to talk about today, since we're on the second Sunday of Lent. We're like 10 days into Lent, give or take. We want to talk a little bit about our Lenten promises and Lent in general. But first, since it's a first episode, obviously we have to do the introductions and who are we and why you should care about what we have to say. So, do you want to go first?
I'm not sure which one of our stories is longer. So, hi, yes, I'm Emma, spooky little Catholic. I was confirmed into the Catholic Church. It'll be 2 years this Easter alongside my husband, Coop. And it's been crazy. If you had asked me 5 years ago if I would have ever been Catholic, the answer would have been heck no. I had a lot of misconceptions and prejudices against the Catholic Church that just came from an upbringing that really didn't like traditional or orthodoxy religion, and I came from a Lutheran light household. Like I've told Coop many times, we basically went to church on Easter and Christmas, and that was it. I was baptized in a very Orthodox Lutheran church up in Seattle when I was born. It was the same church that my grandfather had been baptized into. Prior to being Catholic, I was Lutheran because I was raised in a Lutheran household. And then I kind of went over to Wiccan and Norse paganism for about 12 years, 10 to 12 years. And that story is kind of both of Cooper's and I's, so I'll let him start with his stuff, and then I'll kind of come back to mine if that's okay with.
Yeah. So, I'm Charlie, also known as Cooper, also known as Saint Waffles. Got all the AKAs in here. My journey to religion was a lifelong one, which that should be the answer for everyone, right? It's a lifelong journey towards God. You're always trying to get closer to God. We as Catholics believe that's God calls to us at all times, and we're trying to find God, and sometimes that goes through Norse paganism or goes through Satanism or many different things. So,
And for Buddhism too, we both had a brief stint with Buddhism.
So I grew up in a household that let me do whatever I wanted as far as religion. They didn't care. My parents didn't want to force anything down my throat. They said, whatever you're happy with, you're happy with. So me being the tag child, talented and gifted, I was agnostic for a long time because I felt like that was the smartest answer, because I'd say, oh, well, are you religious? I'd say, oh, yeah, I'm Christian. I'm like, oh, well, I'm agnostic because I'm not so haughty as to be able to tell you what is true or what's not. I believe in a God, but I don't believe that we could possibly know him. Trying to be that smart, intelligent child, like, oh, I'm so much smarter than you because I'm not pretending like I know the truth. A really horrible thing. And then in high school, I was the worst kind of Christian who uses Christianity for my own advantage, to get what I wanted, to impress people, to do all terrible things. So I was the worst kind of Christian. And then after school, I gave that up and was an atheist for a while. And then I worked at a terrible job for a bank. And this job, it cannot be overstated how terrible it was. My first day, they showed us around to show us where the cry rooms were. So when you had a mental breakdown, you wouldn't do that in front of other people. You could go cry in the corner where other people wouldn't see that. They once had to send out emails to tell people to stop laying down in the floor in defeat. because it was a fire hazard to have people laying on the floor weeping. And again, you need to go to the cry rooms to go cry. So,
and if you think that he's exaggerating, I actually ended up going to an interview at the same place that he worked, and I ended up walking right back out the office because just you could cut that tension in that place with a knife. It was bad juju in there.
It was terrible. So after years and years of working there, no surprise, I was depressed. I was super unhappy, and I wanted to make changes in my life to become not unhappy. And important to the story at this point, I was well over 400 pounds because I was just eating and smoking and drinking, trying to kill the pain of that job. So I remembered my father's advice. My father always had great advice, but this is possibly the best piece of advice he ever gave me, which was that as a man, if you want to be happy, you have to work out your brain, you have to work out your body, and you have to work out your spirituality or your religious side. And if any of those are out of whack, you're going to be unhappy. And I never really believed him until that moment at work where I was like, I'm not working out my body, I'm miserable. I'm not working out my religion, I'm miserable. I'm not working out my mind here, I'm miserable. So I decided to try and find the truth. And obviously I'd already done Christianity. That wasn't true for me, so I tried Buddhism. Found no truth in that. I tried Satanism, both theistic, where you believe in an actual literal Satan, and atheistic, where it's just atheism with extra steps. I studied demonology. I studied New Age religions. I looked into paganism. I tried all these different religions and found... I thought about it because you were like studying your stuff. I was like, well, maybe I should go over to your side, right? To the Wiccan and witchcraft and paganism and I always forget the word for it. I want to say it's eclectic, where you just take things from everything.
That's right.
Then that was what I was going to do next, which is, well, maybe I'll just take some paganism and some Buddhism, just mash it all together. And then one night I had a medical emergency, which, no surprise, if you're well over 400 pounds, chugging energy drinks, smoking, like, you're going to have a bad time. And I thought, well, that's it. I'm going to die here. And something primal came over me when there was truly no other options. I felt like I was backed against the wall. The only thing I could think to do, and again, it didn't feel like a natural choice. It felt like that was just like everything coming together. Like, this is what you do. I just prayed to God, not Satan, not Buddha, the Christian God. And I was like, I don't want to die. Help me. And obviously I couldn't sleep because I was nervous about dying. And I just heard a voice say my name, and I fell asleep. I woke up the next day completely fine, and I said, all right, that's it. There's the truth for me. I picked up a Catholic book because I had tried regular, quote, Christianity, and I saw that Catholicism had a lot more rules, a lot more structure, and I said, this has got to be the truth. And since then, I've lost 130 pounds. Got confirmed on Easter 2 years ago. And I've never been happier, never been better. Like, I found the truth in it, and I've been living that truth and trying to spread that to other people, which is why we're here doing a podcast on it, or YouTube video, or whatever this ends up being.
So while are you wanting to go with Cooper, Charlie? Because it's natural for me to call you Cooper, because
it's whatever's fine. Everyone knows me as everything.
Okay, so as Cooper was going through that journey of figuring out a bunch of health problems, you also had another major health problem that we were told that he needed surgery to fix. And the surgeon that we had prior to the one that he ended up going with, and the surgeon that actually did the procedures and the surgery, told us that he had a 50-50 chance of dying on that operating table. And so we electively decided that maybe we don't do that right away. And the doctor was plenty okay with doing the surgery with his current health where it was as he was discussing it. If you know anything about the medical field, the heavier that you are, the higher your blood pressure is, the more complications that occur during surgery. I don't know what was going through that surgeon's head, but it wasn't anything that... I'm glad we didn't go through with it. And I'm not sure exactly what the turning point was for us to get you back into, I think it was like 5 or 6 years later. We ended up going back to the doctor. We found a different surgeon, one that was Lutheran, actually. He and his wife were Lutheran. And he was amazing. I don't remember his name anymore, but he also had a lot of concerns about complications with the surgery. If Cooper wants to share what that was, that's his business, his medical history. Whether or not he wants to divulge that, that's up to him. But they still, as far as I recall, because it's been like 3 years now, they still thought there was going to be a lot of issues. And so a little bit more backstory to me. So we'll backtrack just a little bit. I came from a family where there was a lot of trauma, and I'm not going to get into the detail to, what that trauma was, but it messed me up a lot. And I didn't realize how badly that it affected my mental health up until I'd gotten into my late 20s, and I was suicidal, 3 weeks out of every month. And my mood swings would just go, from like a 360 within a minute. I had no emotional regulation. I was struggling, and I had basically tried everything that I could to regain a sense of control over my life, and nothing worked. Paganism was really attractive to that because it allowed you to feel like you had a sense of control. It really doesn't. It's imaginary. And I'm sorry for any pagans that are listening to this now, but as someone who was in it for, almost 15 years, it's just role play. It's fantasy. I'm sorry, but not sorry. So none of that was working for me. And in 2018, my grandfather went on to hospice. My grandfather, if I believed in soulmates, was one of mine. I'm trying very hard not to cry now, right now too, just talking about it, but we had a very special bond. I love that man. I hope I get to see him in heaven one day. But I lost him, and I knew prior to losing him that I was not going to cope with it well, and I didn't cope with it well. And so on top of dealing with that grief and trying to hold my family up, because I'm the oldest of 4 children and our family is a little dysfunctional, so I'm usually the one that holds everybody up. If you've seen Encanto, I am Luisa. My sister is Isabella, and that's kind of how our family functions, except in a much more dysfunctional fashion. And so I'm dealing with that. I'm trying to help with funeral arrangements. I'm trying to, keep my mom afloat because she just lost her father, and that's... My father was never around, so my grandfather was about the closest thing to a dad that I had growing up. And so dealing with that, I have my suicidal ideation. I'm dealing with depression. I'm dealing with anxiety. I eventually got diagnosed with ADHD 2 years ago. I had that. Didn't know I had it. PMDD, had that too. And I just couldn't function in life at all. And then we had Cooper's surgery happening, and I thought I was going to lose him too. During that period of time, Cooper and I did a lot of ghost hunting. We did a lot of paranormal research. We had the podcast is still out there if you want to dig for it, but it's cringeworthy now.
That is also in the spirit of Lent and penance. I feel like this podcast is our penance a little bit for that other podcast, because we said so many wrong things about Catholics and...
Well, you mostly. I wasn't Catholic at the time.
Yeah,
but...
I said a lot of wrong things, and it's still out there. So this is my duty to correct
our
my
TikTok
younger,
is still up too.
dumber
it's
self.
It's bad.
But that's one of those things we'll talk about. Like, when you're in those things, you're drawn into it, right? As you delve deeper into those things, it becomes more your world. We'll get more into that later, though. Back to you.
But yeah, so after my grandfather passed, I was trying to find some proof of life after death, so I was trying to find a way to cope with him being gone. And so we delved into it. I was there purely for answers. And Cooper loved the toys.
I was playing with toys, and like I'm a photographer now. My love of photography came because we bought a camera literally to try and take pictures of ghosts. Like, it's kind of embarrassing and cringe to say that, but
I mean, not really. Spiritual photography has been a thing since the Victorian age.
It has,
so.
and it really got me into it. So yeah, I was there for the tech and the toys. I was all about, give me the broken SLS cameras, give me the...
He was our token IT guy on the team.
The what do you call the EMF reader things? I loved all that.
And so with all that information in front of Coop's surgery happening, I thought he was gonna die. And I don't know if you know this, but I kind of love you. We've been together for 14 years now, and the thought of losing you was something like 2 years after my grandfather had passed was just... It wasn't good. I was not dealing with that well at all. And there came a night where, and as embarrassing as it is, I was pagan, I was Wiccan, so I was trying to do little spell things. I was doing little like safety pouches. I was warding the house, doing all kinds of things. Basically trying to pull out every Hail Mary that I could, and it's ironic that we're saying that now as Catholics, but every Hail Mary that I could to make sure that you were okay, because again, I had no control over it, right? I'm not the one conducting the surgery. I'm not there. I have no part of it. I did have a pretty large part in your recovery, but I had no control over that situation. And I remember it was like a week before you went into surgery, and I just felt compelled to buy a cross, and I put it on, and I bartered with God. And I was laying in bed at night, and I was having my hourly meltdown for the day, and I was just like, I don't care. I don't care what it takes. I will dedicate my entire life to you. I will do whatever it is that you want me to do if you keep this man alive. If you don't take my husband away, I will absolutely dedicate my life to you. And I had made promises to God before, as we all do, and never kept them. And, 2 years later, we're still just as passionate, and even on the days that we're not passionate, we're still upholding the law of the faith. We're still going to mass. We're still doing everything. But he knew I was going to hold that promise, I guess, as God knows all things. But the crazy thing is, I felt that my grandfather was in that operating room with you. And my grandfather had been in the emergency room and under many surgeries before, because he had 3 heart attacks, and so he was no stranger to the doctor's office. But I also felt that God was with you in that operating room, and I still didn't believe at that time. I was pushing hope as far as I could push hope. And I remember sitting in that waiting room as they wheeled you in, and I sat there, I think, for 4 hours, and they were texting me updates as they were happening, and they said you prepped just fine. I think it was 2 hours in, a nurse texted me, and he's like, no, you're doing fine, no complications, we're good, still good. He's under anesthesia now, or whatever. Did they do anesthesia with you? I don't remember.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So he was out, he was under, and then I was, communicating all that information to your mom as your parents as we're going through, and I remember you being done, and the nurse's aide came out, and he's like, he really wants to see you. He's back here. I'm gonna take you to him. And I was just like, oh, thank God he's alive. Thank God he's good. And I went to go see you, and you were groggy as all heck. And it just, I'm trying to do this without crying. It's I can't explain it, but when you have such a bond with somebody and they don't want anyone else but you, because you didn't ask the nurses for anybody else but me. You didn't ask for your parents, you didn't ask for your brother, you asked for me. And you were so out of it. Because you had just got out of surgery and you had been waking up coming out of it for a couple hours at that point. And you held my hand, and they had to wheel you into your room. And so there was like, okay, we have to take him now. You were not happy about that. And we get into your room. The nurses are taking your vitals and stuff. And then, the doctor comes in and sits down with you after you've regained some consciousness. And he's like, yeah, that surgery went out without a hitch. And I don't know if you remember everything that he told you, but they were expecting so many complications, and there was not a single one.
The only thing I can remember was demanding to see you. That was literally, I know that when I had any semblance of consciousness, I knew you were worried about me, you needed to see me, and I demanded to see you. That's all I can remember for quite a while, because I was out of it, but I know that I had to see you.
Yeah, but it was that moment, especially after we went through I think it was 4 months of recovery. Because you had your surgery, and I know you were mostly healed by December of that year. I think
2021.
Yeah, so
So to put some context on the surgery, I'll talk a little bit about it. So it was not life-threatening. It was a hernia. I had, as my doctor said, the worst hernia he had ever seen in his entire life as a surgeon. And I had lived with it for 15 years.
But the thing, though, it was life-threatening.
It definitely wasn't in some ways. But it wasn't if I didn't have it treated that day, I wasn't going to die that day. But it took away quality of life. It took away happiness. But
there was also a major possibility of it turning and then...
Right. But so if you want to play at home to get a semblance of how bad this hernia was, because it's an inguinal hernia, which means it falls into your manhood. So if you go to your kitchen and grab a cantaloupe and shove it down your pants, you too can experience the discomfort that I had.
It was larger than a cantaloupe.
It was bad. It was painful. It was embarrassing.
I would say about a soccer ball.
So if you want to experience that, you can go ahead and do that. But so usually in a hernia they have these little pre-cut out meshes that they put in there, and it goes without a hitch. But because mine was so large, he had to custom make the mesh, and that's part where they thought the complications were, because the bigger the mesh, the more problem you have, the more chance of it breaking, all those sort of things. For the rest of my life, I can never lift more than 10 pounds because it puts pressure on that every time I do that. And if I can tell a little bit longer of a story, if you're okay, I'm not hijacking your story. When people talk about having their prayers answered, this affected me for a long time. And I prayed every day that I believed in God for him to take that away, and I would wake up and would still be there, and that really hurt. And so when people talk about why aren't my prayers answered, now that it's fixed, I can clearly see why that took 15, 20 years to answer that prayer, because it's not God can just snap his finger and make it go away. I needed so much more than that. I needed to be married to you. I needed to have the motivation to lose the weight. And most importantly, I needed someone, you, to take care of me when I was done. Because it was 4 months road to recovery. I could barely walk. I had tubes hanging out of my body. I literally had to lay on a couch with puppy pads for all day long. I couldn't even get into bed. I needed so many things, but I didn't know that at the time, right? I just knew I was in pain. I wanted it gone.
He needed an in-home caregiver that entire time, a 24-hour caregiver.
Yeah. So... Now that I'm through it all, I can say, okay, God, I see it. I see I see why you sent me on this path. And I know this is not comforting. And I tell this to people all the time, like, I get it. You want your prayers answered now. They will be answered in time. And you'll understand it when you're done. But that's not comforting in the moment, right? When you're going through hell, it's not comforting to know that, well, it's not forever, right? You'll see why you went through that in 10 years. But you will. That there is a plan.
Yeah.
And it will make sense. But it still sucks going through it.
I know, because I'm going through it right now with my job, and I really don't see the reason for it. But yeah, it's it sucks.
So we started the RCIA process. That was tough. Part of what took me so long to become Catholic was because my job just never allowed me to. And somehow, again, it all came together. You said you wanted to go to RCIA. I said, okay, I want to make this happen. We found a class that was perfect for both of us on a weekend day that we didn't have available previously. And we had, I'm going to say, we had the best teacher in the world.
Shout out to Brad Becker at St. Edward's Catholic Church in Kaiser, Oregon, dude, because...
After reading horror story after horror story of bad RCA classes, after seeing like the statistics that 50% of Catholics don't even know what they're supposed to believe in, having Brad as a teacher was absolutely amazing. We got through it, and here we are on our second Easter.
Yeah. Cooper's leaving out. I didn't just say, hey, we're going to RCA. I nagged him. I was like, okay, when are we going? When are we going? It's when do we do this? Can we do this now? We're signing up. Can we do this church? Can we do this? I have ADHD, so I'll just start there. And so my hyperfixations, I'm no longer in control of that. And so I remember because we couldn't go to RCA because RCA typically starts in the fall and we weren't there yet. You weren't mobile to get to that point yet. And I think ours started in September, somewhere in September, October.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sitting on the couch, and this was prior to me actually wanting to be Catholic, right? Because when I made this promise to God, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go back to my Lutheran roots. We sat down and we watched because this was also during COVID times, right? So churches weren't exactly open. They were doing... am I blanking on the
virtual
word?
Masses?
Virtual masses. And so I was like, okay, let's watch the Lutheran Mass. And within like 10 minutes of watching that, I was like, no, I don't want to go back to that. And I'd been to a Catholic church like 2 or 3 times prior to that experience with Cooper. And I was just like, you know what? That is not it for me. It used to be. That's what I was raised in. That's what I was comfortable in. So I just thought that was a natural path to go back to the Lutheranism. And so I picked up your study Bible, your Catholic study Bible. I decided I didn't like it. I went and bought my own Bible. Didn't like it. So I went back to the study Bible that you had. And then I remember us, because you were still couch-bound at the time, so we were sitting on the couch and watching the Rosary on the TV, because I was trying to learn how to do the Rosary, so we would do the Rosary together almost every night. And then I started watching daily TV Mass on YouTube, which, if you haven't seen any of their Masses, they've been live streaming. I'm pretty sure they're still live streaming every Mass.
Yeah.
Every day. And it's in a Canadian parish, and... for me to understand, okay, the order of the Mass and everything else, it was really helpful for me to be able to just sit down and watch it over and over and over again. And, obviously the readings are different, but being able to do that was super helpful, especially during COVID. And we ended up going to St. Edward's Parish in Kaiser. That's pretty much our home parish now. We haven't been there as much lately just because I have a new job now and I'm sleeping in later, and so we've been going to other parishes.
That 11 o'clock Mass is a saver.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to the 2 p.m. Spanish Mass.
And I'm not bilingual enough for that. I can do the in nomine Patris. I can't even say it. But yeah, and it's crazy because Cooper's talked about how much his life has changed from the better from becoming Catholic. I can't express to you how much it has changed my life. Again, I'm trying not to cry just because I noticed such a stark difference in who I am now compared to who I was 3 years ago. I don't think if I hadn't have found the Catholic Church, if I hadn't been so stalwart in my belief, I wouldn't have gotten therapy. I wouldn't have gone and gotten the diagnoses that I need to get the medication I need to handle a lot of my mental health issues. I have had a handful of people in my life who have done terrible things to me at a young age, and I struggled to forgive them. And going through RCIA, part of that process, especially those of you who haven't been through that process, is you pick a patron saint. Mine was Saint Maria Goretti, and if you don't know her story, she was murdered and had an attempted sexual assault by her perpetrator. And sorry, our cat is being really cute next to us. And she forgave him, and because of that forgiveness, I think he's in the beatification process of becoming a saint, because he turned his life around.
Not quite a saint yet, but they think that he's going to make it.
Because he's had miracles, or she's had miracles, excuse me. And it was astounding to me that I believe she was like 7. It was astounding to me that a 7-year-old could lay on her deathbed and forgive someone for that. He took her life. And for me, choosing my patron saint was a matter of, I want to have a role model to look up to. And that role model for me was a 7-year-old girl. Because if I, as an adult, can't forgive the people that did horrendous things to me, nowhere near as bad as what she went through, I don't even know if forgiveness would be possible. And I've finally gotten to that point. I have forgiven those people, and it was through the help of the church, the help of the teachings, help of praying for Maria's intercession. Also St. Jude. I feel very called to St. Jude, patron saint of lost causes, because I was one. And I had hit rock bottom, and I don't think I would be alive, honestly. I genuinely don't. And it's so hard to express that to somebody because like when we went through RCA, well, at least I did. Not so much, because your parents are Catholic, and so you have a little bit more of a support system. But my family was just like, I don't know about that, and wasn't exactly polite about it. Not everyone in my family, but enough.
That's going to be a whole episode topic, and everyone who is Catholic, who's converted to Catholicism or has looked into it, knows that isolation. Like, my grandparents were like, is this a cult? Are you joining a cult? Are we going to lose you? Your family wasn't supportive. We had friends who no longer speak to us.
Yeah.
I personally have experienced businesses who said, I don't want to do business with you because you're Catholic. Like, it is one of the single most isolated. I say this all the time, like, Catholicism is such a paradox. It's one of the most isolating things, but you're joining such a huge community that you don't feel isolated, because there's all this tight-knit community of people who have those experiences, especially in the RCIA program, because they're going through it at that moment too.
It is, and it was such a paradox for me too, because I'm gay, all right? So I'll just put that out there. And I came out of the closet in 2020, and I went, like I tell Cooper all the time, I went right back into the closet when I joined the Catholic Church. And I just did not know how to cope with that duality. And it's something that I've really been wanting to work on within our own parish, and because we don't really have a lot of support system for Catholics who are dealing with that cross, and that in itself is isolating, especially if you are a gay Catholic. And especially in Oregon, it does run conservative, but we have it has a very outspoken liberal community as well. And And so you get pushback from both sides. And that sucks. Because I was a gay pagan. So you would think that I would have had more pushback as that. And I didn't.
No, that community welcoming, right? That they want you to do whatever you want is what you want, right?
Yeah. Like the phrase you've been saying, they don't yuck your yum. They let you do whatever. I don't do well without structure. I don't do well without rules. So I've really found home in Catholicism with that. But yeah, I got more pushback for becoming Catholic than I ever did as a pagan. And it was funny. My grandmother, who passed away 2 years ago now, 1 year ago.
2, I think.
That's 2. God, that's gone fast. She called my mom after we got confirmed, and she's like, thank God I'm not gonna say word for word because she cusses. She's like, thank God she's not into that witchy stuff anymore. And I was just like, Grandma. Because I tried to hide it from my family because I knew that they weren't approving, because while they were religious and Lutheran, they weren't practicing, but it was just a hot mess as far as my family goes. But we're here now. I remember the day after we got Easter, we went to the Easter vigil, and we went out to the grotto Easter morning as Catholics, and it was the most peaceful. I don't even know how to describe that feeling.
The grotto is a Catholic retreat in Portland, not a because it sounds like the Playboy grotto. Just clarifying, it is a Catholic
I don't
grotto.
know anything about Playboy. I didn't even know there was a grotto. Sorry.
I'm pretty sure that's what they call it. That's why I was like, let's clarify. It was the Catholic grotto, not the gross grotto.
It's a Catholic church. It's a Catholic monastery, because there's monks that live up there.
There's a monastery. There's shrines for like all nationalities. They bring like all
beautiful.
The world together.
Even if you're not religious, from a historical and cultural aspect, definitely visit. It's just phenomenal.
It's a pilgrimage place for sure. I know people come from quite a long ways to come see it, so it is beautiful. And every Christmas they put up lots of lights, and it's fun to walk through there, see the lights.
No, we didn't make it to that this year.
We didn't make it this year. We didn't make it to that or zoo lights. So
just had too much going on with work, but yeah.
So
no, I'm done.
So that's who we are. So do you want to hit on our topic of today? Let's talk about Lent and what we did and all that.
Sure. I grew up Lutheran, so we did Lent not well. And no one ever really taught me the purpose of why you give up things for Lent. And they're just like, oh, this is a thing that we do. I guess we're just not eating sugar for a little bit, and then we go back to eating sugar, and life goes on. There's no learning. There's no penitence. There's no teaching of sacrificial love. There's nothing of that air that was taught to me. So coming into the Lenten season and the Easter season as a Catholic, it was a very different experience than what I grew up with in the Lenten season, because it's a penitential season, right? And this year, I'm struggling. We both gave up meat, and I gave up anger because I've been struggling a lot with that lately, and I gave up sugar, and I gave up social media.
I'm mostly doing the meat. I don't have a lot of things to give up anymore. I did anger last year. I gave up anger last year, and that actually stuck. I feel like I've been a much happier person since then. But I mostly don't drink. I try to limit my caffeine. I don't eat sugar anymore because I'm still losing weight. I don't smoke anymore. I'm running low on vices. Food has been my vice. I think both of us never in a million years thought we would ever give up meat. We love our hamburgers. We love steak and asparagus.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't want to give up meat. I genuinely did not. But it's just one of those things where, okay, God tells us that we have all of these things that we do because it's good for us, right? And the whole purpose of doing the things that, at least for my case, I'm sure you've communicated this before too, that you're trying to build a habit. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to better my mental health. I'm trying to be better and more conscientious about what I put into my body. because your girl loves Carl's Jr. and that's not good every day.
Hardee's for you people on the East Coast.
What's Hardee's? I don't.
It's Carl's Jr.
Oh,
they have
they
like
don't have...
they're called something different for some reason.
But it's the same franchise?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Did you read the pastor's column today and the thing we had?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so it actually connects to that. You were talking about how like sometimes you don't pick what you're giving up for Lent. God just kind of tells you like, hey, you're giving that up. So the pastor's story today was that he saved up as a kid to get a brand new stereo sound system in his car, and that was his pride and joy. And it was like a week before Lent. And then as Lent was coming up, he's like, okay, what do I want to give up? And he said, I felt God tell me you have to give up that radio. You're so proud of it. You just spent all your money on it. Now give it up. And he said, no, God, I will not do that. The first day of Lent, his car radio was stolen.
Oh, no.
So he didn't get a choice in giving it up for Lent or not because it was taken from him. So
see, that's kind of what happened with me. So we knew, I had kind of already decided that we were giving up meat during Advent, and I was like, okay, that's we're gonna do this. And so we started researching vegetarian recipes and that. And then I got this job in October. It has been the single most frustrating experience I've ever had in my life, aside from my family. And it has exercised every bit of patience and humility that I have. And I come home angry and frustrated every single day. And I was like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. So, and when I go to confession lately, that's usually the number one thing is I can't deal with these people. I don't want to deal with these people. God, don't let me deal with these people. I'm an introvert. I can't do this. And Father Tim was just like, pray for them. When they make you angry, pray for them. They frustrate you, pray for them. Didn't want to do that. But I came out of the confessional, tried, didn't do well with it. So I decided that this Lenten season was gonna be like my number one thing, aside from giving up meat, was giving up anger. And so far I'm doing okay with it. I got really frustrated yesterday with some Reddit content that I was not supposed to be on. And that pretty much cemented that I needed to give up social media, that experience, because I calmed myself down. I didn't get angry, but I felt myself getting to that point. Calmed myself down. I was like, nope. Bye-bye, Reddit. We're not doing this no more. And the whole purpose of social media was to prevent the doom scrolling, right? Because I know a lot of us struggle with it. We just sit on our phones and just swipe over and over and over again, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, what are we calling Twitter now? X. And there's just, it's not good for you. At the end of the day, going through 60 different emotions on TikTok as you're swiping from a child dying to someone having their first party, to a dog getting adopted, to someone winning $1 million, to someone losing their grandma to dementia. We are not equipped to deal with that in a span of 60 seconds. That is not good for us. And so I think I've done a better job of being more conscientious of the content I consume. That's helping.
And that's the whole point of Lent, right? Like you said, when you're in family, never talked about the reason why you do Lent. And I think it's important to know, why we do it, but also like God doesn't tell us to do things for no reason. I know that a lot of times Catholics feel like, and especially people not Catholic looking in, like, well, why does God have this rule? Why does he make you go to church on Sunday? Why does he care if you eat fish on Friday or not? Why does he care if you say a rosary or not? You see these things, but they all have purpose and meaning, and giving something up, fasting from something, has such power in our lives. And I don't think people realize that until you do it. And in fact, today I said I want your live reaction when I said it here, but I told you a little bit earlier.
Well,
so
congratulations. Yeah. I have ADHD.
But
I have no idea what you said earlier. So
I was thinking on it today while I was sitting in church, and I thought if everyone fasted, I think we could eliminate a majority of world problems. And that, like, a lot of greed is because people feel like they don't have enough money. They want more and more. If you fasted from money or fasted from those wants, or even just have the ability to tell yourself, you know what? I don't need to make $150 an hour. Maybe $120 an hour is enough. Or maybe I don't need a third yacht. Maybe only having one boat is enough. That would make a huge change in our world. Same thing with like a lot of sexual assault and things, like being able to tell yourself no if you want that. And we're going into a new weird pioneer land, like AI. The people who took Taylor Swift and they made nudes out of AI, Taylor Swift using AI, and all that was that's people who said, I really want this and I'm not willing to tell myself no, right? They're so desperate to see something that they shouldn't have access to, that they have no right to, that they forced a computer to generate this horrible thing and violate someone on such a level just because they're unwilling to tell themselves no. We talk about all the time, like, kids need to be told no, right? Because if they don't, they'll grow up to be spoiled brat adults. But we as adults don't tell ourselves no enough.
No, we don't. Yeah, that's been a hard one for me. Just being able to tell. Fasting isn't difficult for me. Just begin. I'm sorry, you'll hear me say I have ADHD. This is why I do this all the time. But I forget to eat all the time. So fasting really wasn't that big of a deal to me. It just got extended out a few more hours. But being purposeful about it is also important. You can't just like, oh, I forgot to eat, fast. It needs to be purposeful. It needs to be held with intent. Unless I don't know. I don't know unless I saw it in action and had like a control group and saw people fasting from specific things throughout their lives, if that would help them say no overall. I think it would, just in practice, but I genuinely don't know.
Well, that's what I tell people when they're struggling with anything. Like a big one I give advice on the forums. People talk about being addicted to porn. And I say, you got to fast for that. And they say, well, how does not eating food stop me from looking at these images? And it's building that muscle. Self-control is a muscle, and you've got to use it. So if you can tell yourself no to food, something you literally need to be alive, maybe not that day, but if you don't eat, you will eventually die. So being able to tell yourself no to something you need makes it a whole lot easier to say no to something you don't need, like those images.
It's true. There's also a little like asteriskness to what you're saying though, because people don't understand how just phenomenal it is. Like your self-control is next level. Like I don't know how you do the things that you do.
It is a blessing. I'm not blind to that. I quit smoking pretty much cold turkey, quit drinking cold turkey, quit sugar cold turkey. I am very blessed to have that self-control, but a big part of that is I've been training that since I was a child. Some people might argue, some of the things that I thought and did as a child shouldn't have been things that a kid needed to think about. An 8-year-old shouldn't be walking around the mall thinking, where are the threats at? I need to protect mom. I need to make sure that if there's a situation, I can handle it. But that's a part of self-control. That's being on alert. That's part of being measured.
You might want to give some context as why 8-year-old you was wandering around.
I was in a military family, a very traditional military family, and very much that, you're the man. Your job is to protect your family. That means you need to be on alert. You can't just be walking around in La La Land. You have to spot the threats. You have to know the threats. And you have to be able to do something about the threats. And it's a lot of self-control to be in that mindset, especially as a child, always be on alert. Now, granted, that's caused other problems. I don't recommend it. That's contributed to anxiety disorders and other things in my life. But it's helped me build that self-control, and I'm very thankful to have the self-control now to be able to say no. I didn't have that's how I got to 400 pounds, because I needed some sort of vice in my life, and I've realized I didn't need that vice. I needed God. I needed something to focus myself towards, something to build myself towards in a constructive way.
And I know your dad told you that it was a man's, you need those 3 things to succeed as a man. I don't feel like that's true for just men. Because I've started adopting it myself, and I feel better. I mean, obviously, I feel better when I exercise. I feel better when I'm exercising my mind. I feel better when I'm being dutiful in my work and being just contributing to society overall. And also having that spiritual aspect, exercising your spiritual life as well. And your dad, I got snippets of wisdom from my grandfather, but your dad has had a well of just things that have helped me, and I've never told him because your dad's not exactly an emotional being. But I remember we were sitting over at your parents' house one day, and I've always struggled with anxiety. The climate stuff going on in the world right now is a huge thing for me. But your dad basically said if it's not within the scope of your control, there is literally no point in worrying about it. So don't do it. And I was like, oh.
It's so simple, but
okay.
It works.
Like, I can do that? That's a choice? All right. And so I've been doing that. And yeah, mental health is a lot better because of it.
It's... My dad and my grandpa both are huge role models for me, and I put them on a pedestal a lot, but there's some things that are just, like, my grandpa, I still swear that my grandpa is some form of, like, supernatural. One of my only memories I have of him as a child was my grandma was on an ATV, and she was going down a hill, and as a kid, I'm sure I'm wrong, that she was going like 60 miles per hour, like going down this hill. She was in danger. Grandpa saw that. He ran out there and just grabbed that ATV by the back and lifted it up because it was a rear-wheel drive and just stopped it from moving. This 60-year-old man ran out, grabbed an ATV, and lifted it off the ground to prevent her from speeding down a hill, just like that.
I'm pretty sure, this is my working theory, I'm pretty sure that whatever napalm your grandfather inhaled when he was over in Vietnam basically turned him into a modern-day superhero. He basically got Spider-Man'd in.
He beat lung cancer
while
smoking.
Twice! Who does that?
We always joked that he was going to outlive us, and sometimes I still have a deep-seated fear that he might outlive us. Like, that dude. And, like, we were talking about giving up meat for Lent, and his question was whether or not chicken counted as meat, because he doesn't like vegetables. He likes his good meat, and chicken is basically a vegetable.
Basically a vegetable.
So, I have strong men in my family to draw from, and that's also been hard because I was a very emotional child, and learning what it is to be a man. I got a lot of great lessons from my dad and my grandpa, but also learning to be a man and a human from God, from Jesus, there's a lot more to it. And having that perfect role model, the silent saint.
Yeah, Saint Joseph, head of the family, there's a lot of great saints and men to pull from the Catholic faith. Like, you didn't talk about your patron saint at all. Your journey to it, anyway.
So I like to do things on hardcore mode. So our RCIA teacher said, you need to pick a patron saint who can be a role model. We were just talking about role models. I decided to choose an archangel. The only thing you can't possibly have as a role model. You started
with Saint Jerome, though.
I did want, so Saint Jerome was known for his anger, and he would carry around a rock. In some traditions, they say it was a skull, because he had a human skull on his desk too. Mm-hmm. And whenever he'd get mad at people, he would pick up this rock or skull and he would just beat himself with that until he was no longer angry. And it's like, oh, that's perfect because I'm angry. But I realized kind of halfway through it that was a really bad reason to choose a patron saint. Like, I didn't want to be known for my anger. I didn't want my anger to consume me. I wanted to let it go. And I thought if I chose Saint Jerome as my patron saint, I was always going to have that anger. And like I said, I gave up anger for Lent, and I've been pretty successful in keeping anger out of my life. I remember I used to be the kind of guy who would go driving, I'd wish cancer and death upon people, right? You cut me off, then you deserve the death penalty. I want you to die. And it wasn't just like, oh, I'm just kidding. Like, no, I want you to lay down and die, you disgusting human, because you cut me off. Like, the anger was so extreme. And now
we flip-flopped.
There's still some bad days, but I've gotten rid of it. So I needed a different patron saint.
Yeah.
And medical issues have obviously been a huge part of my life. So Saint Raphael the archangel is of course known for healing, and it just felt like a much more case of hope, right? Like, health has been an important part of my life, and now I have something to strive for. And my archangel, my my patron saint helps me to focus on that, towards healing, towards not just healing from anger, healing from medical things, healing from past traumas, and hopefully helping other people with their healing process. So I also got, because we went to Mount Angel Abbey, and I got sick while I was there, while we were on a retreat that we had paid good money for.
You got sick at the retreat? I don't remember that.
Was it? We were over there. Yeah, we were in the room. We were staying there overnight for something. I didn't feel well, and I prayed for intercession and felt better. So that just was the final sign that I needed from that. Okay, Saint Raphael the Archangel is
yeah, because that was in December of us going through RCIA. So yeah, we were at the marriage retreat in Mount Angel.
The marriage retreat. That was.
We got this giant book of saints that we were looking through that night too.
That's what we were like going through, and it was so sad reading through the books. It was like, these 12 saints are martyrs. These 15 saints are martyrs. These 2 saints are martyrs. Just like dead, killed, angel, killed. Like there's so many saints for the faith, and reading through that book was depressing to see how many people have been killed for the faith. But
I don't see it as depressing. I see it as the most loving thing that could have been done. And the fact that those people stood up and said, I wish I could communicate the way I normally communicate. I cannot cuss on this podcast, and I'm sorry. But these people are really just like, nah, F you. I love God. I'm not getting rid of I'm not turning away. I'm not kneeling to this king. I'm not renouncing my faith. No. And they got killed for it. Yes, their death is sad, but they're sainted. They're in heaven now. They're good.
Is it Saint Sebastian? Whoever's the patron saint of cooks, who his mythos is that he was burned alive, and they asked him for his last words, and he's like, I'm done on this side. Can you turn me over?
I don't think it's Saint Sebastian, but I don't know. I don't remember. But
okay, we're going to go off on one quick tangent here. Because we went to a drive-through light this year that was put on by a church. It wasn't a Catholic church. Yeah. And all this talk of saints, they were talking about like the real story of Saint Nick. Mm-hmm. And this part that just like blew our mind and made us laugh so hard is they were talking about how he was a bishop at one point. And they were trying to explain, like a bishop is like your local church's pastor, just a little different.
Yeah.
Because they were not a Catholic church, so
no.
They didn't want to have to explain the Pope and the pauper of the papacy and all that. So like, yeah, bishop's basically just like Pastor Joe.
And yet you're still teaching about a Catholic saint.
Right?
Yeah. It's sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
I'm just like, it's just crazy how much, because like prior to even being Catholic, we visited Mount Angel a ton. And if you're in the Pacific Northwest and you have the time, have the money to just go visit, if you've never felt peace before in your life, visit that abbey. You will experience it tenfold.
There's a quick shout out to my own channel. If you go through my playlist in the Catholicism playlist, I actually got to work with the Mount Angel Abbey and create a video called What Makes the Mount Angel Abbey So Special, where I got to fly a drone over them and interview some of the monks and talk to them. And it is an unreal experience to be at the Mount Angel Abbey. And that's one of those things, I'm going to say this a lot. This could probably be a whole episode at some point. Like, signs you knew, or signs that you were going to become a Catholic, you just didn't recognize at the time. Loving the Abbey was a big one. As a kid, I always loved to be the paladin. I loved to have like the holy warrior of God give me my bucket helmet and my big sword and let me go smite some demons.
And I've always loved religion studies. Like even in college, I took Middle Eastern religion studies, and that's I put us on the Buddhism path. That's my fault. And researching Hinduism, Buddhism, I don't remember the other. There's a trifecta of them. But churches, man, I was so drawn to the architecture, and I know that's like one of the selling points of the Catholic Church. They're just phenomenally, there's beautifully built churches.
There's no competition. Like, one of the churches I went to that was a non-denominational church was literally inside of a gymnasium. It was on a basketball court, and you compare that to stepping into like a 500-year-old cathedral with stained glass and all. Like, there's no competition, right?
There is something to be said, though, because the OG Catholics were doing it in secret in somebody's house.
Mm-hmm.
One of our local parishes, St. Joseph's, caught on fire last October. And we were holding masses out in the parking lot in the rain, and that was an experience.
It was a good experience. I didn't think it was going to be. I can't stand for long periods of time for a myriad of reasons, but I stood out there in the cold, a little bit of rain here and there, and there were more people than I thought, and not just like, oh, the young trads. No, the elderly were out there. Everyone came together.
Watched like a 90-year-old woman lay on her knees, kneel on concrete.
On bare concrete,
like,
with like gravel and stuff in it.
I did it. I had to get back up. I don't know how that woman did it. I genuinely don't.
I've always stood by. There was a lady at the church who was really old, who always kneeled, and I wondered how she did it, and I mentioned it to someone, and they said that she had both of her knees replaced. She couldn't feel it. It's like performance enhancement drugs for Catholicism. Have your knees removed, and then you can kneel as much as you want.
It's funny. They asked me at work, because like a lot of our computer things need to be fixed all the time. Our machines need to be fixed all the time, and part of that is getting on the ground, unplugging it, restarting it, yada, yada, yada. And I work with people in my age bracket and then much older, and they're like, "Are you good? Like, do you want someone younger?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm 32. I'm not old, for starters." But I'm like, I'm Catholic. I'm on my knees all the time, and this is nothing. So I'm good. I'm fine. I remember we had gone to, I'm not sure if it's around Advent or around Easter. It's around Easter. It's around Good Friday when they take the hosts out of the
Mm-hmm.
And then we go and we worship and have adoration basically in the parish hall. And there was one year, and it was the first year that we had done it, and I remember I was kneeling for like half an hour on the cold concrete, and you're like, "Are you good?" And I'm like, "Yeah." It was actually more comfortable sometimes than the pew kneelers. I'm not trying to humble brag. It's I have a lot of things wrong with me. Thankfully, my knees aren't one of them.
So to bring us back towards our topic, if you've made it this far through our ramblings, we appreciate it. If you want to share in the comments what you gave up for Lent and how you're doing on it, or your patron saint and why you chose your patron saint, we'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to hear you talk about those things. Of course, any topics you want us to cover, all that. We have so much to talk about. We've been talking about this podcast for years, so we've got 1.5 million ideas, but it's always good to hear what other people want to hear and what the community wants. So
let's talk about why we're going with cross country.
I love puns, and I thought it would be a great, it's not cross country as in the sport, but like a cross country as in like Christianity for the country United States. Like, for me, it was just a fun pun, and I love puns. So
okay, I don't think Charlie or Cooper remembers why we settled on that.
We both have memory problems, so between both of us, we have a half a functioning memory.
So cross country was because our ultimate goal with this is to be able to go visit other parishes, to go visit other churches across the United States. I'd love to go overseas. We eventually want to go visit the Vatican. We want to go visit Italy. We want to go visit the basilicas. We want to go to Jerusalem. We want to do all the Catholic pilgrimages that are part of this whole journey. But we're not going to be rehashing a lot of theological and moral ambiguities. If you have those questions, those are more geared towards the people at Catholic Answers. More geared to your local priests. We're not here to tell you, hey, is this a sin? Is that a sin? I'm like, yes, we can tell you that, but you should be getting it from your priest. You should be getting it from your going to confession, sitting down with your priest, getting it from your RCA director if you're an RCA. What we are here to do is to be involved in the community. For us, especially when we first started discussing this, there isn't a lot of media for alternative Catholics. And by alternative Catholics, I mean, I'm spooky, I'm goth, I love Halloween, you're a gamer, and I was actually kind of surprised to see how much of a gaming community isn't within the Catholic community. It's pretty large, actually.
They love Warhammer, which is ironic because I love Warhammer, but the trad Catholics in the Warhammer community are like a Venn diagram. Like there's a huge overlap.
Yeah, I didn't know that. But what we would like to do is to go visit other parishes, sit down in other monasteries, and talk to their monks. That's probably going to be more of a Cooper thing than me, just because, they're cloistered. Women are not allowed in those areas. So if we can have the opportunity to talk to nuns, I would love to be able to go into their cloister and have a conversation with a sister. But that's our only convent, for lack of a better word, because it really, I guess it was a convent.
I was gonna say nunnery.
It was more of a nunnery. The Benedictine sisters in Mount Angel, they ended up closing
because they didn't have enough sisters to help take care of
the elderly sisters. So they were displaced into homes and stuff.
And
that's
happening a lot, right? I don't want to see the monks fade away, but we have like
our monks aren't going to. There is
here.
A very young population. That scared the crap out of me. I'm sorry. Sorry, Alexa went off. There's a very young and vibrant community at the Mount Angel Abbey. I don't see that happening.
You make a good point. I did forget about that, but there's someone once asked why do the Protestants kick our butts at like producing Catholic media and books? Like every Protestant and their dog has a book, and the reason why is because they rehash everything, right? Because they believe in interpreting the Bible for themselves. Every pastor wants to write their own book on their interpretation of the Bible. The Catholic Church has settled it, right? Those opinions have been set. Same thing with Catholic Answers. I consider them to be one of the absolute best resources. So if they say this XYZ, if they've already covered a topic, we don't need to cover it again. We're not going to say anything new on the topic, right? Like they have covered it fully, and they've been around for 30 years. So they've got 30 years of archives. So chances are,
and the Catholic Church has bajillions
the catechism
of
plus
years.
2,000 years. So if you have a question, chances are it's already been answered. We don't want to rehash that. We want to do our own stuff.
Yeah, and communicate our experiences and basically give people a safe space in an environment that is more suited towards the younger generation who doesn't feel like they have a place in the Catholic Church, because it depends on the parish. For us, there isn't a community for young adults as much. It's usually the elderly, retired, and children, which is great. We need those programs for those populations, but there isn't anything for us.
There's nothing more frustrating than wanting to get involved in the church, and they say, oh, great, well, we meet at 10 p.m. on Wednesdays.
Or 9 a.m. on a work day.
Yeah, like, okay, well, I work, so I will never be able to make that. Thanks anyways.
Yeah, and that sucks. And it's also, it sucks a lot to not feel like you have anything in common. It's, because those are 2 generations above us right now. And they're not out playing Pokemon. They're not playing Stardew. They're not going out and doing urban exploration. They don't know what TikTok is. And so being able to, talk about those types of things within our community and
I've been trying so hard to convince my dad to get onto TikTok because I know that
he's
never going to do it, but he would be a TikTok sensation. He's got the huge beard, and they just sold all their possessions to go RV camping and live out in the woods and away from things. I like the bush. He's got that bushcraft, the dad vibes. He can build or do anything. Like
he's a retired Marine.
He would be a TikTok sensation. Like I have been struggling and clawing and just hit 4,000 followers on YouTube. I think he could do that in a day.
Your dad could get close to like 250,000
oh, yeah.
just by a couple videos.
Without a doubt.
And like your mom is a homesteader, and a lot of people are really into homesteading right now. Yeah, they would do good, but it's just not
they don't
their
want
shtick.
That. But I mean, we like we were saying, we want to do this for us. So there's going to be like we put this on the St. Waffles YouTube channel. So we're going to be putting up like we've been learning vegetarian recipes. So you're going to see vegetarian recipes. We filmed a short video of us making I can't remember what we made. But, we wanted to do grocery hauls and talk about these are new exciting things we're trying. I made a hummus wrap with spinach. Two things I never thought I would willingly eat, and loved it.
Hummus is surprisingly good. I never thought I would like
Right?
hummus, but we went out to Independence. I think it was like our first weekend of vegetarian. So like 3 days after Ash Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, okay, we're doing this. We have to learn to adapt our diet to, going out. And we went to this little cafe, and they had hummus as a protein option, and we got our first hummus sandwich. That was the most delicious sandwich.
Right?
And I was just shell-shocked at how good that was, because I love steak. I love chicken. I am a carnivore, and I was not happy about this change. So to be able to find things that actually work for us has been great.
I'm finding everything works for me. For a snack today, I had pickles and tofu, crunchy tofu.
You're going to be learning that Coop eats weird stuff.
This morning I made kimchi eggs. So yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun videos of that. Grocery hauls. There's a couple pilgrimages around us, so maybe someday we'll get to go do like the walking. The Trappist Abbey near us has this really cool statue apparently, but we've never walked the
it's like 7 miles up a steep hill
to see it. So that's what you can anticipate. So if you're here to just have the questions about Catholicism answered, that's not what we're gonna do. But if you want to have some friends who are a little bit different, a little bit strange, a little bit into the goth, the gaming, and just kind of talk about Catholicism and how it's affecting us.
And if you're part of the LGBTQI, I'm sorry, I love y'all. I can't keep up with all the different letters and some. I'm sorry, I can't. But if you're part of the LGBTQI plus, and you don't feel like you belong, maybe you'll find a place here. Like I said, I am part of that community, and I understand how hard it is to not feel like you have anybody that you can relate to, because like I said, we don't have anything. It's especially hard for gay women. There are virtually no resources for gay Catholic women, and I would like to at some point in my life change that. But as for right now, welcome home. You can hang out with us. We're not going to judge you. Like the Catholic Church reminds us all the time, we're all sinners. We're no better than anybody else. We're never going to be like pulling down the hammer on you.
I know people hate on Pope Francis. I personally love Pope Francis.
I love Pope Francis,
but I think his response of who am I to judge
exactly
was the perfect message that he needed to spread at that time. Certainly there's a lot of conversations about LGBTQIA and Catholicism. If you go on Reddit every single day and like the Christian forums, there's a million questions every day, and people have their own thoughts and wants and all that. So we're not going to rehash that out here either, though. We're not going to. This is not specifically a podcast where we're going to talk about that every day, or that's going to be our issue every day. But rather, we want to welcome all Catholics or all people questioning and
talk about our journey.
Join the journey.
Everyone is on their own section of that journey, and we're still new. Yeah. 2 years, almost 2 years, and we've learned a lot.
Yeah,
we're still learning. I just don't ever see.
It's
how
a
we're never going
journey.
to.
Brad told us, we'll bring up Brad a lot because again, he is one
I'd
of the
like to have Brad on the
I know.
podcast if he has time, but dude just had another baby, so
5 kids now. But he said
4.
that Catholicism is a constant reorientation. Some days you just need to adjust a couple degrees and you're facing God again. Other days you're 180 degrees off. You need to turn all the way around to see God. It's a daily, constant reorientation towards Christ, and that's the journey we're going on, and that's the journey we welcome you to join us on.
So yeah, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, I think that's pilot episode 1 done. One last thing, talking about monks. The music you're going to hear attached to this video is provided by the monks, Father Robert Nixon of the new Norcia Abbey, located in Australia. He makes music. Check him out on Spotify and YouTube, and he has given us generously the permission to use his music here. So if you like that music, check Father Robert Nixon of New Norcia Abbey.
All right, thanks y'all. God bless. Stay
Everyone
happy,
have
stay
a blessed
healthy.
day, and we will see you for some other episode.